Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses, the podcast where we go beyond the bios, beyond the titles, and explore the lessons that shape today's most inspiring voices, all through the songs that have moved them and shaped their lives. Each week, we build a playlist of a leader's life. 5 songs, 5 lessons, 1 unforgettable conversation.
Let's put the pedal to the metal, let the top lean back. I don't know where we're going, I don't know what we're running to. I'm checking for you, how you feel about that. I think it's time we rendezvous.
And today, I am so excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Vicki Johnson. Vicki, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. It's a pleasure.
So let's just give our listeners a little bit of your brief bio. I know we'll get into your story, but it's really so impressive. You're a speaker, you're an author, you're the founder of your own tech company, Profellow, which is the leading U.S. platform for emerging leaders, linking a diverse national audience of 300,000 plus members for competitive fellowships to top graduate schools and leadership development programs. You're obviously super smart. You got your doctorate. I know we'll talk about how that all happened for you, but you took what you did to try to help others and helping others in the profession, but also all of us as a society are bettered by these fellowships and what other people who are aspiring to get their doctorate or just people who are interested in bettering different causes, different research areas. It's such a big undertaking that I can't wait to get into how you even thought to do that, but I'm so thankful that you did. So again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, Shannon, we'll get into the details. It's hard to encapsulate a life quickly, but I will say at this point in my life, I am really focused on a singular mission, which is to help people get into the elite academic and professional opportunities that can really launch their careers into leadership. And especially my goal is to help reduce the barriers for people to get into these things. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, in a low-income family, but I had 2 parents that raised me and taught me excellent skills around storytelling, public service, serving others. And I used that to help me get into really competitive opportunities. So I entered Cornell University for the class of 2001. And then I started working for about 15 years in public service and government at the intersection of emergency management and public health. In that course of that, I did a bunch of adventurous things. I did these fellowships that I stumbled upon, and they took me all over the world: Germany, DC, New York City, New Zealand. Also did 2 graduate degrees. And when I started my company, Profellow, with my husband, we didn't know where it was going to go, but we were just focused on the goal that I just talked to you about, which is really unlocking these opportunities for other people, because I saw that there was a lot of barriers and there's a lot of exclusion. And it seems to me that these extraordinary opportunities shouldn't be just for certain groups. So I've been working for the past 10 years through my company, first to unlock the opportunities through our platform, helping people find them, but then I also work to help people win them.
In doing the backstory here, I knew a little bit about you because we both belong to this amazing organization that's basically a leadership organization for women who want to go from, the motto is from important to significant. The organization is called High Power. And I'll shout out my ring. I'm ring 4. And what cohort were you in?
Ring 11. So the last one before the one that's starting now.
I'd like to say we've paved the way for you guys.
Definitely.
But it's such an amazing organization. So I got to know you through that. And everybody who's in High Power is so inspiring. Literally, I could interview the whole lot because they have such amazing stories. What I will say, what stuck out about yours, and we're going to get into it, and that's why I want to start with your upbringing, your beginning, is just how dedicated you are to really helping so many other people get rid of barriers in an area that has pretty much been elusive. The average person doesn't even really understand what a fellowship is. They don't even know those opportunities exist. And it's life-changing for people who do this. And we'll talk about how it was life-changing for you. So the fact that, you could just be sitting around happy with your own life-changing experiences, but you're so specifically focused on making those changes for millions of people, I mean, I knew I had to have you on the show because A, I wanna get the word out, but B, I think that there's so much about people who are like, what I call selfless leaders. So, I wanna understand how this even started for you as a young Vicky in Wilmington, Delaware, which is a really small place. I'm from the East Coast. I know Delaware. You can drive through it in 5 seconds. It's a small, small place. How does little Vicky even dream to even go to college in that regard, in terms of, like you said, you grew up in a time where, you didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of resources. How do you even dream to do that? And I love the fact that your song for this part of your life is called Good Riddance by Green Day. I love that song.
That song, yeah, that came out my senior year and was, I think, played at our high school graduation. So, yeah, Wilmington, Delaware, I don't know, it's not a super small place. I think it's like a medium-sized city, but not really
Mm.
anything to write home about. But
Oh, it's no Washington, D.C. or San Francisco.
Wilmington's an interesting place, but my siblings and I, when we grew up, we went to the local elementary schools, public schools. And the high school that I went to, Wilmington High School, was the city school for all the urban students and surrounding areas. It was the oldest school in the state of Delaware. But in that time in the 90s, when I was going to school, it was going through a lot of challenging periods because there was a lot of issues around the school being under-resourced. There was a lot of race politics and socioeconomic politics. They were trying to implement school choice. And when they did that, a lot of people kind of left the school, leaving us with a school that was really challenged. Now, that was the high school that I was assigned to. So that's where I went. My brother went there. And honestly, though, I've always been a student that was really dedicated to my studies. I loved to go to school. I was in every extracurricular. I was top student. I'm doing Girl Scouts. For me, learning was fun. I enjoyed being ambitious and going for big things. And so I was always going for the leadership positions, head of the marching band, student class president, my senior year. Going to college was a little bit of a challenge because I had a 1250 SAT score, which it's not a bad score, but it's not a top score. And my dream was to go to Cornell University, but I didn't really receive much encouragement that something like that was possible.
And wait, why Cornell? Like, just curious.
My dad went to Cornell in the late 60s, and he had always talked about Cornell. He studied as an engineering major, but he's an interesting person because, he left engineering to work in the inner city as a Lutheran minister. So he gave up engineering for religious purpose. And so he was also kind of giving up a secure financial path as well. We weren't without anything as children, but we didn't have a lot of resources for things like SAT tutoring, or certainly not to go to private schools and things like that. So we used the resources around us and made the most of them. And I learned a lot about public service and community service from my father, how he modeled that. Now, he always talked kind of disparagingly about Cornell in the sense that it was very cold and very hilly. I don't think he really thought I had a chance of getting into Cornell because of my grades. We visited nearby Syracuse University, and I visited the campus because he said, you know what, why don't we just, it's right there. Can we just go stop and see it? I walked onto that campus and I was in love. I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. I don't know if you've ever seen the Cornell campus in Ithaca, but it's like this gorgeous old campus. There's lakes in the background. It's like something out of your college dreams as a child. And so I just was emphatic about applying. But then, there was this concern that like, okay, Vicki, you don't really have a chance of getting in. Your SAT score is probably not high enough. You're from this city public high school that does not send students really to Ivy League schools. So, good luck. But I just decided, I'm going to apply anyway. And I worked with my dad on the story, the personal statement. My dad is a really experienced speaker and storyteller and writer. And so that was a unique advantage that I had. Working on that story, I told a story of what it was like to be captain of the state's worst high school field hockey team. I talked about leadership from the perspective of being on a losing team, not a winning team, like the worst losing team. We were the butt of everyone's jokes. But I talked in my personal statement about ambition, hard work, disappointment, friendship. And I really think that exhibited my leadership potential. And I think it got their attention. So, it did come from that kernel of my dad going there, but I still had to overcome these sort of other obstacles, right, to tell my story and figure out what's going to give me that angle that's going to get me in. And of course, I really emphasized my leadership and community service that I was involved in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I talk about that. Now, could I had a bit of luck because of the legacy status? Potentially. Certainly my parents were not donors to Cornell, but
Right.
I know that there was other legacy applicants that didn't get in. So I do think my story played a very significant role. And that was like the beginning of me figuring out how to crack this code around really leveraging your unique lived experience
Yeah.
to tell a story of your future potential.
I have no doubt that your story really set you apart. One thing for sure, I had a roommate in undergrad who wound up when we graduated becoming an admissions officer at my alma mater. And she used to tell me that, yes, grades and SATs are important, but to everybody listening here, they really do want some unique stories. They want to have a well-rounded student body. And I have no doubt. I mean, yeah, your dad went there, but even his pathway is so different. And it's no surprise as we get later into the episode about your story, it's no surprise that that whole you being a servant leader was very much something you sat and witnessed. He modeled it for you, and then it just became ingrained to who you were. And as you even talked about, like your sports teams and things of that nature, you were still somebody who you still wanted to help other people. I can tell that like you were that person on the team that was like, yeah, we might suck and be in last place, but we got each other type of part. Like that's just who you just being.
Yes, and we were all like that. And also, both of my parents really instilled these values in me that you use your talents and your skills to help other people, right? You can have personal ambition, but it really should be used to make a greater impact on others. The beauty of that is when you do that, it's very personally fulfilling.
I can't wait to get to how you founded this company, but we're still a young adult. We've graduated. We've done something pretty amazing. We've gone to this Ivy League school. We've done really well. And now you're about to go have kind of like the beginning of your career, and you're going to go to where else? New York City. I'd love to kind of understand your first job and how you got there. But the song that you picked, I think resonates with, especially if anybody who was certainly alive in 2001, this will resonate with them. But it's God Bless the USA by Lynn Greenwood. It's a song where maybe it's not one that I play often, but when I hear it, it does evoke an emotion in me and probably most people. So I'd love to kind of hear what you were up to and why you picked that song.
Yes. Anyone younger listening to this podcast might not know what that song is. And I'm definitely not going to sing it because I mean, it's a very patriotic song. To go back, so my senior year in high school, this is part of the story. I was a government major. I knew I wanted to work in government. I went to the career office to look for opportunities, jobs that I could apply to. That's where I first discovered this idea of what a fellowship, because I found a brochure for the New York City Urban Fellows Program. And this is a special program in New York City government that selects 25 recent graduates from all over the country for a one-year professional fellowship placement in New York City government. And it was very prestigious. It's been around since 1969, very competitive. I mean, if you get selected for this program, you get to pick your work placement among 25 different agencies. And then there's also a leadership development curriculum for the fellows. There's special trips to DC and the state capitol. You meet the mayor. It's a very prestigious program. So when I looked at this brochure, I was like, what is this? I said, this is incredible. Dream opportunity. Like, this is the thing I want. Took it to my senior advisor. And I said, what do you think are my chances of getting into this? But he said, well, Vicki, I mean, you got some things here, but you have only a 3.2 GPA. You don't have any internships on your resume, because I waitressed and worked during the school year in the summer. And he said, Vicki, you're going to be up against not just top students from Cornell that are applying to this program. You're going to be up against top students from all over the country. So this might be a waste of your time. Now, like me, just like with the Cornell experience, when they told me, no, this discouraged me from really getting my hopes up about it, I said, I don't care. I'm applying to this anyway. And I just resolved to be the most prepared. So I did intense research on this program. I was reading the New York Times every single day. I thought about my aligned career goals. I emphasized my community service work that I did all through college. And that got me in to this program. So I got selected for the class of 2001 to 2. This means that our cohort arrived in New York City just a week before 9/11 is when we began our program. So I can still remember the day when I came up out of the metro station that's just in front of City Hall in New York City, which is way downtown. If you know where it is, it's about 7 blocks from where the World Trade Centers were. I came out and I witnessed the first plane hit, complete chaos. I mean, but I didn't even fully understand. I just thought, oh, it's a horrible accident. I'm 22 years old. But then we saw the second plane hit, and then I knew, oh, this is not an accident. I can't go into the details about everything that happened in that day. It's still even emotional now when I think about what I witnessed. In the weeks that followed, there's a lot of disruption to the program, but they still allowed us to start interviewing and picking our placement. I put Office of Emergency Management as my top choice. I had no idea what the job would entail. I thought I would go into education policy and work at the Department of Ed or the Board of Education. I decided instead to put OEM as my top choice, and I got that placement. There was 2 of us that were able to work there in that year, and I learned about the whole world. I was part of the recovery operation, working in social services. You might remember there was also the anthrax attacks that happened that fall where anthrax was being sent in the mail, so there was bioterrorism happening. I mean, it was an incredibly fascinating and somewhat stressful time to be working, but man, did I learn a lot in that period. And so that song, Proud to Be American, that was playing like all the time. I really missed the feeling of that period. We were a very united nation emotionally in that time. And I haven't felt that feeling of being united in a very long time. And when I think of that song, it harkens to that feeling of being united, especially in New York City. And so people from different sides, different backgrounds, we can be united, but you might remember how the feeling that song evokes is what happened.
I mean, I think it's one of those, there's a handful of moments that we can all say we remember where we were. And so 9/11 is certainly one of those. If you were alive and of a certain age, you certainly can recount it. And there are songs, there are things that could trigger you to be right in that instant. I was at work or on my way to work, heard about it, get to my office, and I happened to sit on the floor where our HR team also sat, and people were literally running through the hallway. And I was like, why are they running? And I still hadn't really understood that this was a terrorist attack. I think I was like, oh, that poor plane, like the first plane I knew had hit a building. I saw like Katie Couric and Matt Lauer on TV, and they didn't even say it was a terror attack. So I was like, it's just really sad. And then come to find out, someone who worked at our company was actually on one of the planes that hit the Pentagon. Obviously didn't make it. And so there was just it was just a really horrible day for our nation, horrible day at work. You'll never forget it. And so certainly when I saw that song, I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that song in a long time. But it absolutely evokes those emotions of that day. And quite frankly, I remember a year after 9/11, on the first year anniversary, I actually had to fly somewhere for work. And I remember my husband and I talking about, should I even get on a plane? Like I was afraid to get on a plane. And I remember I went ahead and got on a plane, and we're on the plane and the pilot says, like, I want to have a moment of silence. I remember we were all sitting on the plane and we were crying. I remember being so emotional just sitting on that plane going, oh my gosh. And the whole plane was united. Nobody was looking around saying anything about your political views or anything like that. It was like, we're all Americans and we're all still, like, it was raw. And it was 1 year later because everybody knew somebody that had been impacted by 9/11.
Yeah. We also deeply respected public servants and first responders. I mean, they were our heroes. And I still feel that way. I think many of us do. So I miss that feeling. I hope we can get back there as a nation.
Me too.
But, there's a lot more to the story. So
there's a lot more to your story. So at a very young age, you somehow stumble upon fellowships. Like you literally stumble upon it. And then it turns out being this expansive experience that literally changes the trajectory of your life, right? Your life is changed because you do this fellowship. And so let's go on to like, okay, so now you've kind of done this. You've been in New York. You've been all over the world. You've had some amazing experiences. And you, at some point in your personal life, you meet this wonderful human being named Ryan. Talk us through that. That has to happen somewhere in the story. And then you guys kind of get together and decide to start your company, Profellow.
Yes.
And the song that you quote is called Hall of Fame. And it's the script featuring Will.i.am. I actually wasn't familiar with that song. I had to look it up. Great song. but want to know kind of why you chose that and the beginnings of this amazing union, both professionally and personally.
Oh, yes. I mean, that song was from that period of time where we were starting the company. I feel like we were very optimistic and idealist and naive when we were starting it. But I mean, a lot have happened up until that point. So after I did my New York City Urban Fellowship, I discovered the German Chancellor Fellowship by doing some internet research. So I spent a year in Germany on a fellowship. After that, I found and won a fellowship in Washington, D.C. called the Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellowship. I lived in the UK, did my Master of Science in Public Health, came back to D.C., worked for a congressional commission under the Obama administration. Long story short, when that commission ended, that commission was about 2 years. It was like my dream job, but it was it had a time limit to it. I applied for my final fellowship, my fourth fellowship called the Ian Axford Fellowship in Public Policy, which is administered by Fulbright. And it's a 7-month fellowship in New Zealand, specifically for American public policy leaders. Because I was a policy director of a congressional commission, the timing of it was perfect. And I said, I'm going to apply for this. It was a mid-career fellowship. I was worried that I was a little young for it because I was in my early 30s. I think it was 31 when I applied. But, I used the strategies over time. Like you said, I've been applying to all these fellowships and jobs, landing them. And I'm developing my unique expertise on how to be a really standout candidate. And so I applied those strategies to this application, to this fellowship in New Zealand. The other interesting thing is that when you apply to fellowships, often they're many months up to a year before the fellowship begins. So I applied for this fellowship a full year before it would actually begin. And I was so confident that I was going to win this fellowship. And there was no reason for me to be that confident. I decided to close down my online dating profile because I was single. But then, one more match came through just after I submitted my application. And I thought, let's meet this redhead. His name was Ryan. He also had the same last name as me. His last name was also Johnson. So, it's this guy, Ryan Johnson.
Really?
But I had very low expectations for the date. I had been dating, and been single for about 2 years and was sort of like, I'm traveling. I kind of wanted to get out of the DC. It's a very intense culture there, as you might know if you've grown up there. But I went on this date with him and we immediately hit it off. Immediately. We started dating, and then the fellowship was going to have their interview. And I hadn't even told him that I applied for this thing. So I had to reveal to him about 3 months into dating, okay, I got this interview for this international fellowship. I was so afraid he was going to say, well, that's the end of it. We'll stop dating. Or are you going to give up the fellowship? He was 1000% supportive. He was so excited for me. He came to the reception for the finalists. He did everything. And he didn't once question, what about us or what about me? He just was my biggest fan from day one. So when I did win the fellowship, then it was a question, okay, now what do we do? Now it was only going to be 7 months, but it could be a long time in your early dating career. So we started talking about, well, would you want to come with me to New Zealand for the 7 months and have an adventure? And he was right on board. He quit his job. We moved to New Zealand together for the 7 months. We weren't even engaged yet. We just were like, yeah, why not? I mean, by that time, you sort of know what you want and what you don't want. And for me, Ryan was a culmination of just everything I'd ever been looking for in a partner. And then I was so excited to have this adventure for him. And it was an even greater adventure than I ever had imagined. So we moved to New Zealand. I also fell into a PhD program in New Zealand after the Fulbright. So we ended up staying there for nearly 2 years. And that's where we started Profellow. Now, Profellow was actually Ryan's idea because he saw me speak at the Johns Hopkins School on fellowships before we left. And he's like, wow, everyone wants to know about these fellowships that you were talking about. The women in the audience were especially interested. He said, why don't we start a company around this or a website? Because he had a tech background. I did not. I said, okay. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but we started doing pitch competitions and we developed the idea. We were doing all sorts of things. We thought maybe should we get an investor? Yeah.
Vicki, this is talk about just fate on top of fate, but yet
Yes.
I'm a believer that it's not fate. I actually am a believer.
I think it moves in weird ways, the universe.
It was literally meant to be. And once you kind of got to the point where you're like, I give up.
Let it go.
Once you literally didn't care, it just started happening. And then you wind up, what are the odds of meeting this guy who you both like each other and you have the same last name,
Yep.
trippy. And
Yep.
then it's like, well, you know what? We just started dating, but I'm about to bounce and leave the United States. And he's like, cool, let's go. I mean,
It's got to be love, right?
like who
Everyone around us is like rolling their eyes, like, "Oh God,
like
these two.
what?
This is going to be a disaster."
But
You
it
know?
turned out to be like exactly the right timing in the right place because then he's got all these skill sets and you've got all these ideas and it's like this perfect union. And yet it was one of those things where again, people are like, oh, it was fate. It was like, no, it was destined. That's how I see it. It was like
it
a
was
destined
destined.
pathway.
And for any younger people listening, if you start thinking like, "Oh, it'll never happen," or these things are never, I always say life is long. Life is long. A lot of things are going to come in the course of your life. Sometimes, though, you do have to let go the control a little bit.
And you see great things happened when you did. And so you guys are like making it happen. You're grinding. He believes in your dreams. This is his dream too. And you start this company, you start getting this amazing traction. And now you're like full steam ahead on this company. And I want to hear like how it scales. And then again, personal life, we bring a kid into the fold. We start with one
Yes,
kid.
yes.
And so the song is 93 million miles. It sounds like it was scaling, or personal life and professional life was scaling, scaling, scaling. And so walk us through that period and just how life-changing and the lessons you got from that.
Well, just so you know, Profellow was not an instant success. We did not take on investors. We didn't really have a strong business model when we very first started. We had some ideas, but we didn't really know what do we turn this into. What Profellow really turned into is a media platform. We started producing content about fellowships, which is very niche. But the goal was like, why wouldn't people be interested in this? These awards, they provide funding. I'm going all over the world. People are constantly, how do you get paid to travel the world? How do you get funding for graduate school? Because my PhD was fully funded. So I was like, well, let me talk about this because, Ryan thought this could attract a big audience and he was right. So we just started producing it. But, honestly, it wasn't really making any money in those first couple of years. It was kind of more of a side project. I had to finish my PhD. I was still finishing my PhD when we moved to San Francisco, which was Ryan's dream. So he wanted to work in Silicon Valley. That was always his dream. This was the perfect time for us to give that a try. So we moved to San Francisco. Neither of us have jobs. I have just my little stipend from the PhD. We get a sublet. We have a very limited amount of money. We have about a 6-month runway before it's like moving home with the parents in our 30s. And when we were engaged by this point, so we were planning a wedding, a very small wedding. He got a job right at the 6-month mark. He started working for a company called Elance in product management. Elance is now Upwork. It combined with the other company. I can't remember its name, but and then it became Upwork. And he worked through Elance/Upwork all the way for about 8 years. So, he was there through their IPO and we got to live in San Francisco during a fascinating time. We saw when the Lyft cars had their pink mustaches. Nobody would remember this, but we saw the beginning of many of the major big tech companies, Airbnb, Lyft, Uber. Like it was cool. San Francisco was cool. It was an awesome period. But also in that time is when I'm getting up in age a little bit. We start having our kids and we were ready for our kids. So I had my son. He was born in 2014. So we're living in this apartment. I had taken a job in the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission that only lasted 10 months. And then I left. I resigned from a toxic situation. And then Ryan said, you know what, just work on Profellow. Just see if you can get it somewhere. But I did that song 23 Million Miles, if you know it, it's a song to a child, at least the way I interpret it, because it's about, no matter what, you can always come home. And anytime I had heard of this song, it made me think of when I become a mother, I really want to have a very close relationship with my children. Like motherhood was a huge deal to me. And I will tell you that being a parent really softens so much because you live a very self-centric life up until the point you have children. And then suddenly there's a whole new dynamic, right, to your life. But that song was very meaningful to me because I was playing it while I was pregnant with my first child, my son, Penn. And it made me rethink about what kind of company do I want? Because we still could have gone the route of trying to blow it up into this big company. But I was always worried that if we did that, I would move away from the personal mission to make this about helping underrepresented people get into these opportunities. I didn't really want it to be some kind of big like lead gen site or some kind of student loan, like scam site. I mean, that to me was very, very important. Even today, we don't sell people's information. Privacy is very important. So the primary way that we make revenue is through this boutique advertising that we do on behalf of universities and foundations and fellowship organizations, as well as workshops and courses and programs that I sell directly to the audience. And it's a beautiful system of value for everyone involved. The company is relatively small, and I like it that way. I mean, I enjoy having full control over what we do. And also in that period of time that I started having children, and I had 2 children, because my daughter came along not long after, I couldn't have managed a big company. I mean, we weren't in a position to hire a nanny and do all these things. So, I had to build a company that fit my lifestyle. That's what we did.
So many nuggets and amazing things in that story. I love what you said earlier. These careers are long. I know they don't seem like they are, but they're long. And you go through seasons. And you have to give yourself grace in certain seasons. I certainly remember those kid rearing years for me. I got about 10 years on you in terms of when I had the kids and things of that nature. And I just remember, like you said, like those years are a blur. I had to do things. I had to maybe work in jobs I was overqualified for, but my personal life just dictated that I had to do that. I have one child that's on the autistic spectrum, is just a whole different type of raising a child. And so you go through these seasons, and I love the intentionality that you were going through your season and you were like, I'm going to match what's going on professionally with where I am in my season. So yeah, I could do this to my company. I could sell this. I could do that. It could make this much more money, but it wasn't about the money. Let's go back to young Vicki from Delaware, who has a family who's mission oriented, who has these values. She doesn't lose her values now that she's in her 30s. She doesn't lose them. In fact, she double downs on them and says, I can do this company my way. Oh, so if I don't take your money, I can do what I want. Good. I'm not taking your money. It's refreshing to hear that story, because living in Silicon Valley, you don't hear a lot of people saying, I didn't take the money.
Oh, and people poo-pooed. They were like, oh, that thing, Profellows, they would like say it wrong. I had one guy at a Cornell alumni event literally laugh at me in my face when I was sharing with him like my company. But it's okay, because I'm living toward my values and my mission. It doesn't matter what other people think. And I'm solving problems. I'll tell you, his company didn't last very long because I kind of kept an eye on that. And I thought, that's interesting. There was a lot of money that was coming in and out of the Valley at that time, and still does, like companies grow, fail, move on. That's not what I wanted. And so, although I probably could have learned a lot if I had tried to build this big tech company like was happening all around me, but that wasn't my goal. I will say I was selected for the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center's business accelerator called Milestone Makers, which was awesome because you would think NASDAQ would pick companies that are trying to get venture capital, go on for the IPO.
No, they're intentional. I do know about that program, and they're intentional actually about helping small businesses on purpose. Like this is a part of their mantra. I need you to say something again for the people in the back row. Let's just repeat this. Somebody out there needs to hear this, that you cared about keeping your company tied to your mission and your values. And you didn't care about what John or Jane is doing over here with their company. It was about you believing in you and your mission, what you cared about. And does that mean you're going to be the biggest company in the world? Maybe, maybe not. But at the end of the day, how do we measure biggest company in the world? Is it just by revenue, or is it by something else? And you are the epitome of, you measured your success based off of your values.
Definitely. And I also want to make a plug for social entrepreneurship, because what I see is that when you have a mission that's around like a social problem, like inequity or social justice or others, I find that people think that the default model for addressing that problem is a nonprofit organization. I'm going to start a nonprofit, I'm going to get donations or grants, and then I'm going to solve this problem. To me, that pathway was too long and too challenging. I didn't even know if I could get a grant. And I also didn't want to compete against issues that really needed that critical funding for really, life or death type situations that don't have a way to generate revenue. I think it's our responsibility to try to figure out, can we generate revenue to solve this social issue through providing value that we sell and generate revenue from? I think that model just why do we not celebrate that more? A lot of businesses, small and large alike, are social enterprises. They exist, they solve problems, they create value. Anyone out there who's like thinking about starting a nonprofit, I mean, I would say take a moment and think about, could you make it a business that generates revenue that you then invest into the problem?
Vicki, we could talk about that all day. I started as a tax lawyer and have formed hundreds of nonprofit organizations. And I always say to people when they would come to me, why do you want this to be a nonprofit? Because it's not for profit under the tax code, but you have to make money. Because if you don't make money, you don't have an organization. So you can't have the mindset of, well, we just don't make money. You actually have to have a fairly for-profit mindset to have an organization that operates well. And it can't just be based off of like the goodness of your neighbor giving you money with no expectation that you're doing something with that money that is measurable and impactful and things of that nature. So there's a lot of for-profit motions you have to have in running a nonprofit for sure. And I love that. I can't wait for this soundbite to be also shared with the audience that like social entrepreneurship needs to literally be applauded and rewarded.
I want it to become the default model for social impact, not the like, well, maybe this is this third option. It should be the default, especially when you see what's happening now, cuts to grants and donors are not giving. And, you can't rely on that. And to me, honestly, when you become an entrepreneur, you have to start testing quickly. Create value, try to sell it. Create value, try to sell it. Create value, iterate, try to sell it. And if it doesn't work, you try something else. I mean, but you can immediately start that. It took me probably an hour to set up an LLC and boom, I'm in business. And then I can start selling things separate from my personal finances. And that's what we chose to do. I thought about the nonprofit model, but honestly, thanks to Ryan's smarts about this, he's like, no, let's make this a business. Also, because you want this to be sustainable.
That's right.
And I agree. And I don't have any experience running a nonprofit either. So, it's either going to be that or the business. And I thought business was more sustainable and more likely to succeed. So
yeah,
that's where we are.
Well, let's get into kind of, we're in your final kind of chapter where you are today. You've had some ups and some downs, like every great journey and leader. You've had some ups and some downs with your business. I want you to kind of share a little bit more about that with us and kind of where you are today. And I know you have a special something coming out today, so I want you to share that with our listeners. And the song that you picked is called The Bones. And so definitely want to know a little bit more about that song. Wasn't as familiar with it, but it was one I was like, oh, I heard it. I didn't actually know the name of it. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, this song has an emotional aspect to it because what she's singing about is the bones of the house being solid. So even when you're hit with disaster, the house doesn't fall because the bones are so strong. When you create something that's based on a foundation rooted in your values, skills, and talents, and you're working on that consistently for a very long time, you're going to create something that has very strong bones so that even when the headwinds of the economy and anything come up in your personal or professional life, your business can still stand. Part of the bones of the Profellow business is also Ryan, my husband, who supports me 1,000% in everything I do. I mean, I couldn't even do the things that I do without his support, which I think is really critical if you want to be an entrepreneur, is to have a supportive partner if you're in a partnership, but also by really slowly, carefully, and thoughtfully creating a real community around Profellow, creating quality content, not taking too many shortcuts, not starting to sell things that were out of alignment with our values. That is what built our reputation. So even when things happen, so right now, like this year, for example, a lot of the universities are suddenly getting their funding cut. There's a lot of volatility and just challenges in the higher education space. I can't even begin to explain how deeply volatile higher ed is right now, but we will continue to have enough partnerships to keep us going. And then also separately, I have my community that will continue supporting the services that I offer. I'm coming out with my first book published by Wiley that is going to be this hand guide to what I've been teaching for 10 years through workshops and courses. So this is kind of an added element to my company. I mean, every cent of proceeds that come from this book will go back into supporting Profellow because We want to continue making our big database and our resources free. I mean, we have paid workshops and things as well, but most people never spend a dime when they use Profellow. And we have so many success stories of people that really just relied on the free resources and credit Profellow for their success. And I want to keep that going. I never want there to be a paywall or huge barrier to using the site and getting connected and being part of the community. So we will be able to keep doing this because of the bones. The bones are solid. So when I say, it's consistency too. People really give up early when they hit challenges and headwinds. People are pivoting left and right. I get that. If you have different goals, that might be what you need to do. But for me, Profellow is my first and only company. I mean, maybe I'll have another company in the future, but I have seen this thing through for now 14 years. This is incredibly important. And I want the legacy to keep going, moving on and keep growing. Maybe I won't always be the head of it, but I want it to keep being there, sustaining for the next generation. So that's what that song means to me.
So, Vicki, we've talked a lot about Profellow, but I want my listeners to really understand what Profellow does. So many people, myself included, didn't know a lot about fellowships. And so tell me what your site does. And tell me if I were talking to my 21-year-old son who's a senior in college at the University of Virginia, or if I were talking to my sister who's in her 40s and has a career and a job, but is also looking for what's going to be that next stage in life. Are there fellowships for her? All the way to my mother, who we won't say her age, but let's just say she is mature and aged quite gracefully. Are there fellowships for her? Help me understand who uses this.
Oh, definitely. Now, just so you know, we have a very broad definition of fellowships because a lot of the things that we share are not called a fellowship in name, but essentially we include things on our site that are funded. So they provide some sort of funding. They're time limited. So these aren't permanent jobs. That's kind of what separates them from a permanent job, is that they begin and end at a certain period of time, and they're merit-based. So they all have a competitive application process. Within that, we have professional fellowships like the ones I mentioned, like working in New York City government for a year. There's academic fellowships that could fund you to study, do your research in undergrad or go to graduate school, do a master's or doctorate. And also for academics, for people doing research, there's research fellowships, postdocs. So there's a very wide range of things. And we've even recently started including business accelerators. Business accelerators also can provide you funding and mentorship in the same way that a professional fellowship does. So we lump everything in there. Like there's got to be some sort of like funding, grant, or at least pro bono resources, time limited, merit based. So within that, there are things at all levels of your career. And you can really start using Profellow in undergrad, in college. Most of the things will extend all the way up into mid-late career. There's summer fellowships in there for college students. So you might find it's almost like a paid internship, but it could even be at a higher level than your typical internship. Coming out of undergrad, there's lots of one-year fellowships for recent graduates. I did the New York City Urban Fellows program. But you might have heard of big programs like Teach for America and Peace Corps. We would characterize those as fellowships. They're time limited and they're a placement. There's things for mid-career because some of the fellowships are looking for experienced people. One of the coolest fellowships, I think, is the Fulbright Specialist Program. If you are a scholar or a practitioner that just has a lot of expertise in an area, there are universities all over the world that are looking for people who will come for 4 to 6 weeks and teach classes and or do a research project.
Really?
So if you get on this Fulbright specialist roster, you can get matched up to these projects and go travel. And, you could do something in business or tech or humanities or other types of research. So it's really interesting because it's not just open to PhDs and faculty members, it's practitioners as well. In fact, I think there's even more of a bent toward that. So there's things you can do. We've got writing residencies in there. We've got, like I said, business accelerators. For your mother who's a bit older, might have a little more challenge finding the right things. Because, a lot of these fellowships are really trying to invest in people who are going to achieve some sort of impact or outcome in the future. So if you're at the very end of your career, it might be a little harder to find things. But let's say she wants to go back and get her doctorate. Maybe she'll find funding for a doctorate at late career. Maybe she wants to finally write her memoir, write a book. I know people who are older that have gone and done archival research at the Smithsonian to dig up old records to do research and then write a book around that. So that's not really age limited. It's just, based on your skills and what you bring. So you can use Profellow. We have this huge database. When you create a free account, Like I said, we don't sell people's information. So it's just to create your account. You can get in and you go into this database that has more than 2,800 programs listed right now, graduate programs, fellowships, accelerators. And then you can bookmark them, save them. I used to bookmark things years in advance of applying. Like the New Zealand fellowship, I heard about that at least 5 years before, but I didn't have enough experience to apply. So I just had it in the back of my mind, like when's the right time? When's the right time? And then also we produce high quality articles that are written by winners and people who've won these opportunities. We are very intentional about sharing diverse stories so people can really see themselves in these opportunities and know that these are for all sorts of applicants. And then I give workshops and courses. I've got free webinars. I've got workshops. I've got in-depth courses. So we have like a whole gamut. So it's to find and to win, but with a
I love
particular
it.
bent on helping people overcome barriers that they might have faced.
I mean, I love it. I mean, for so many people, they're not even aware that these
Oh,
opportunities
I know. We
exist.
haven't done enough work yet,
I love that.
but
I
hopefully
love
my
that.
book will take it to the next level.
We know your book will take it to the next level. And to our listeners, please share this with all of your loved ones. There's so many amazing opportunities out there. Like Vicki said, who knows? It may take you to Germany. It may take you to DC. It may take you around the corner in your backyard. But doing something that actually fulfills you at a stage in life where you wouldn't have even known how to make that happen without these fellowships. So I'm so glad you're bringing that to our listeners. But listen, Vicki, we got to wrap up. One of the things I always ask my guest is a bonus song, and that is, what song just brings a smile to your face when you are, dare I say, listening to the radio or whatever you listen to? What just brings a smile to your face?
I have to say, I listen to a lot of classic rock and I love the song Ramble On by Led Zeppelin. It's just like
Wow.
this, like roll down your windows on a sunny day and go driving. I live in a mountainous area and we have a lot of outdoor activities. And I mean, if it's like kind of a warm, kind of balmy day and you roll down the windows and play that song, you will be transported to another time. It just makes me happy. So that's kind of more of that freedom. And I used to listen to that when I was in high school. So kind of harkens back to that freedom that you had when, you're a teenager.
I love it. I love it. Vicki Johnson, thank you so much. Let's do a recap of the playlist of your life on No Boxes, Just Verses. We start in the very beginning where you really learn a lot about being a servant leader very early in your age. And that song is called Good Riddance, Time of Your Life by Green Day. We next go to a very pivotal time in your life where you follow your dreams, you get this fellowship, and you learn a lot about pride in country and faith and believing in yourself and helping others is always strewn through your entire story. And that's God Bless the U.S. by Lee Greenwood. We go into a new phase of your life, your personal life. You've met the love of your life. You have started really traveling the world. You also start Profellow. And again, as you said, it's kind of like a side project type of thing because you're still building your career. And that time of life is called Hall of Fame by the Script featuring will.i.am. We get into a phase and a season of your life where you have now expanded your family. You brought in one kid and then another. You and your husband move and you make it to the Bay Area and you eventually start to actually try to take Profellow to another level, but on your own terms and on you defining what makes a successful company and you making sure that you're true to a mission, again, of being that servant leader and changing lives. And that's 93 Miles by Jason Mraz. And we end with kind of where we are today. We've got this book coming out and you are just continuing to build your company, but build it on your own terms. And we do not believe in imposter syndrome here on No Boxes, Just Verses. So that's not what's going on at all. If anything, it's people who want to emulate and have your type of leadership and your type of control over their companies. And the bones are good, man. The bones are structured and good. And that song is by Miriam Morris. That's the playlist of your life with a little bit of Led Zeppelin added to the end as a bonus. And we love it. So please tell my listeners, how can they follow you? How can they support you? Where can we find you? And certainly we will have a link to the book, but tell us all of that.
Yes. First and foremost, everyone listening, no matter what career level you're at, go to profellow.com and create your free account and start finding these extraordinary opportunities all over the world to advance your career, have that career adventure. You can find it and then you can connect. Come to one of my workshops. We have all the events listed on the site and on our email list. If you want to connect with me directly, go to my personal website, drvickijohnson.com. That's VICKI Johnson.com. There you can learn more about my book called Pitch Your Potential, the formula for winning dream jobs, awards, and elite opportunities. It's being published by Wiley this fall. That's going to be your immediate access to the formula that I teach that's helped people get into extraordinary programs. More than $500 million in funding has been won by Profellow members and readers. So you need to be part of our community. So if you can find me in either of those places, get the book. And thank you for listening.
Dr. Vicki Johnson, thank you so much for being a guest on Unboxed Just Verses. Your playlist, just like you, is infectious. We can't wait to follow you. I cannot wait to read your book. In fact, I'd love to do a book signing or something for you when you come to the Bay Area. And everybody listening out there, please follow Profellow. Please support the book. And please keep listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And if this episode moved y'all, please share it, rate us, follow the show on your favorite platform, and we can keep building our leadership playlists together. So you can find me, guys, on Instagram as Shannon Nash 1 and No Boxes, Just Verses on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Shannon Nash ESQ CPA. You can also find No Boxes, Just Verses on LinkedIn. You can visit our website at noboxesjustverses.com. Finally, don't forget to check out the show notes. The show notes are super important because this is where the playlists will live. You will be able to get these playlists on Apple and Spotify. You'll also be able to follow up and see how to reach out to the guests, follow them, and support them. Until next time, I need you to stay unboxed. You come for the stories, but you stay for the playlists. I'm Shannon Nash, and I'm out.